Well, ladies and gentlemen, this phrase is a hallmark of evasion and manipulation. At first glance, it may seem like an innocent or even reasonable statement. After all, misunderstandings happen, right? However, when uttered by someone with malicious intent or a habit of shirking responsibility, it becomes a tool to deflect accountability and shift the narrative. Let's unpack how this phrase works and why recognizing it is crucial to maintaining your emotional well-being. When someone says, "I didn't mean it that way," they are attempting to invalidate your perception of their words or actions. They place the burden of misinterpretation squarely on your shoulders, subtly implying that you've overreacted, misunderstood, or even fabricated the harm. In doing so, they sidestep the need to address the issue directly. This tactic is particularly dangerous because it erodes trust not only in the individual but in your own ability to interpret and respond to situations. Imagine someone making a sharp or cutting comment during a conversation. You feel the sting and express your discomfort only to be met with, "I didn't mean it that way." Instead of an apology or acknowledgement, they provide an excuse cloaked in denial. The hurt you feel remains unaddressed, and they avoid examining their behavior. Over time, this pattern of deflection can chip away at your confidence, leaving you questioning whether your emotions and boundaries are valid. But why do people use this phrase? For some, it's a defense mechanism, a way to avoid confronting the guilt or discomfort of having caused harm. For others, it's a deliberate tactic to manipulate and control. By consistently denying intent, they create an environment where their actions are above scrutiny, and your reactions are always under question. This dynamic can be particularly damaging in close relationships where mutual understanding and accountability are foundational. The key to navigating such situations is to stand firm in your perception and feelings. If someone's words or actions have hurt you, your experience is valid, regardless of their intent. Communicate this clearly and assertively. "I understand that you may not have meant it that way, but this is how it came across to me." By doing so, you shift the focus back to the impact rather than allowing the conversation to be derailed. Additionally, observe patterns. One instance of "I didn't mean it that way" could genuinely stem from misunderstanding or poor phrasing. However, repeated use of this phrase, especially in contexts where the harm caused is evident, signals a deeper unwillingness to take responsibility. In such cases, consider setting firmer boundaries or even reevaluating the relationship. True accountability involves acknowledging harm regardless of intent and taking steps to make amends. Someone who genuinely cares for you will be willing to have uncomfortable conversations and learn from their mistakes. They won't repeatedly dismiss your feelings or shift the blame. Recognizing the hidden dynamics behind this phrase empowers you to protect your emotional health and cultivate relationships rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Remember, you have the right to hold others accountable for their actions and to stand up for your own emotional truth. When someone tells you you're just being too sensitive, it often feels like an attack on your emotional responses, minimizing your experiences and invalidating your feelings. This seemingly simple phrase is one of the most insidious tools used by manipulative or toxic individuals to deflect accountability and maintain control. While it may sound like an innocent observation, its repeated use can have profound consequences for your self-esteem and mental well-being. Let's explore why this phrase is so damaging and how to handle it effectively. At its core, "you're just being too sensitive" dismisses your emotions as irrelevant or exaggerated. It's a strategy to avoid addressing the real issue, their words or actions that have caused you pain or discomfort. Instead of engaging in a meaningful conversation about your feelings, they frame the problem as entirely yours, suggesting that the fault lies in how you perceive or react, not in what they've done. This tactic can leave you questioning your own judgment. Am I overreacting? Am I too emotional? These doubts can be deeply destabilizing, particularly when coming from someone close to you, whether a partner, family member, or friend. Over time, it can erode your confidence in your ability to interpret and respond to situations, making you more susceptible to further manipulation. It's essential to recognize that this phrase often reflects the speaker's unwillingness to confront their own behavior. Admitting they've hurt or upset someone requires vulnerability and accountability, which some people find threatening. By shifting the focus to your perceived sensitivity, they avoid examining their actions and the impact they've had. This is not a reflection of your worth, but rather a defense mechanism on their part. So how should you respond when faced with this phrase? Start by affirming your feelings to yourself. Your emotions are valid, and they exist for a reason. Acknowledge what you're experiencing without judgment. This is a crucial step in maintaining your emotional health. When addressing the person who made the comment, strive for clarity and assertiveness. You might say, "I hear what you're saying, but my feelings are important, and I'd appreciate it if we could discuss what caused this reaction." This approach reinforces that your emotions matter and shifts the conversation toward resolving the underlying issue. It's also important to identify patterns. Occasional use of this phrase might stem from miscommunication or lack of emotional awareness. However, if it's a recurring response to your feelings, it could indicate a toxic dynamic. The repeated invalidation is a red flag that should prompt you to reassess the relationship. Surround yourself with people who respect and value your emotions. Healthy relationships are built on mutual understanding, empathy, and accountability. They involve partners, friends, and family members who are willing to listen, learn, and grow with you, not dismiss your experiences or make you feel less than. Remember, being sensitive is not a flaw. It's a sign of emotional depth, awareness, and connection. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Instead, embrace your sensitivity as a strength and use it to build relationships that honor your authenticity and emotional truth. When someone says, "I didn't mean it that way," it might initially sound like a clarification or an attempt to clear up a misunderstanding. However, it can often be a defensive response used by people who don't want to take responsibility for the impact of their words or actions. While intentions do matter, so do outcomes. In relationships, whether personal or professional, it's not enough to focus solely on what was meant. We must also consider how our behavior affected others. This phrase is frequently used to deflect accountability. Instead of addressing the emotional hurt or the problem at hand, it shifts the focus to the speaker's intent, effectively invalidating the feelings of the person who has been hurt. When someone tells you they didn't mean it a certain way, it can feel dismissive, as though the harm you experienced doesn't matter because their intentions were benign. The issue here is that this dismissiveness stifles meaningful dialogue and stops the resolution process in its tracks. Consider a situation where someone's words felt harsh or judgmental. When confronted, they respond with, "I didn't mean it that way." What happens next? Often the conversation becomes about proving intent rather than addressing the impact. It's a subtle way of placing the burden back on the person who is hurt. Now, instead of discussing their feelings and moving toward resolution, they're forced to either accept the explanation or further justify why they're upset. This dynamic can be particularly exhausting and invalidating. Intent does not erase impact. Good intentions do not automatically negate the pain caused. For example, if you accidentally step on someone's foot, your intent wasn't malicious, but their foot still hurts. A meaningful response would include acknowledging the pain and apologizing, not focusing solely on your lack of intent. Emotional interactions are no different. If your words or actions hurt someone, acknowledging their experience and seeking to make amends is far more constructive than defensively insisting you didn't mean to hurt them. When someone uses "I didn't mean it that way," it's important to steer the conversation toward resolution. A helpful response might be, "I understand that wasn't your intent, but this is how it came across to me." This approach validates their perspective while keeping the focus on the issue that needs to be resolved. It also opens the door to mutual understanding rather than defensiveness. It's equally important to reflect on how you use this phrase yourself. If you find yourself saying it often, consider whether it's a way to avoid uncomfortable conversations or to protect your self-image. It takes courage to admit when we've caused harm, even unintentionally, but doing so is vital for building trust and maintaining healthy relationships. True growth comes from recognizing that both intent and impact matter. Acknowledging someone's feelings and making an effort to understand and improve the situation shows emotional maturity and respect. This mindset creates space for healing, growth, and deeper connections. When faced with hurt, remember, it's not just about what you meant, it's about what you're willing to do to make things right. When someone repeatedly says, "It's not my fault," they reveal an unwillingness to take accountability for their actions or their role in a situation. This phrase may sound like a defense mechanism, but it often serves as a tool to deflect blame and avoid responsibility. Bad people frequently use this tactic to maintain their image of innocence while shifting the burden of a problem onto someone else. Over time, this behavior can erode trust, damage relationships, and create a toxic environment. One of the most insidious aspects of this phrase is its ability to derail conversations and distort the reality of a situation. By claiming that something is not their fault, the individual forces others to either agree or engage in an argument to prove otherwise. This dynamic shifts the focus away from solving the issue and onto defending against deflection. The real concern, whether it's harm caused, a mistake made, or an unmet obligation, becomes secondary to the need to establish fault. Consider a workplace example. A team project goes awry because one member missed an important deadline. Instead of acknowledging their mistake, they respond with, "It's not my fault. I didn't get the resources I needed." While it might be true that resources were lacking, refusing to own their part in the situation shows a lack of accountability. This response doesn't contribute to resolving the issue. It simply seeks to protect their ego at the expense of the team. In relationships, this phrase can be even more damaging. Imagine a partner who consistently uses "it's not my fault" as a shield against conflict. Whether the issue is neglecting emotional needs, failing to communicate, or causing unintentional hurt, their refusal to take ownership leaves the other person feeling unheard and invalidated. Over time, this lack of accountability creates a chasm of mistrust and resentment, undermining the foundation of the relationship. It's important to note that bad people often use "it's not my fault" as part of a broader strategy to manipulate and evade responsibility. They may subtly imply that someone else is to blame, creating confusion and tension within the group. By consistently dodging fault, they maintain control over the narrative and avoid facing the consequences of their actions. To handle individuals who frequently resort to this phrase, you must establish clear boundaries and expectations. If you encounter someone who says, "it's not my fault," redirect the conversation towards solutions rather than engaging in a blame game. For example, respond with, "regardless of whose fault it is, how can we fix this?" This approach shifts the focus back to problem solving while subtly discouraging their deflection tactics. Equally important is the need for self-awareness. Reflect on how you handle accountability in your own life. Owning your mistakes and acknowledging your role in challenges fosters respect and trust in your relationships. It demonstrates emotional maturity and a willingness to grow. In contrast, constantly avoiding responsibility erodes connections and leaves others questioning your integrity. True strength lies in taking ownership of your actions and their consequences. Saying "it's not my fault" may feel like a temporary escape, but it ultimately weakens your character and relationships. Choose instead to confront challenges with honesty and humility, and you'll build a reputation of trust and reliability that no deflection can match. The phrase "one didn't mean it that way" is often used as a shield to evade accountability for the impact of one's words or actions. On the surface, it might seem like an innocent clarification, but when repeated habitually, it becomes a tool of manipulation. Bad people often lean on this phrase to dismiss the feelings of others, absolve themselves of blame, and escape the consequences of their behavior. It's an example of how words can be weaponized to sidestep responsibility. At its core, this statement diminishes the experience of the person who has been hurt or offended. By emphasizing their own intent over the impact of their actions, the individual shifts the focus away from the harm caused. For example, imagine someone makes a cutting remark during a conversation, and when confronted about the hurt it caused, they respond with, "I didn't mean it that way." While this might technically be true, the response neglects the emotional damage inflicted and suggests the phrase "I'm only joking" is one of the most common ways that bad people disguise their disrespect or harmful intentions. It cloaks cruelty in the guise of humor, allowing them to say hurtful things while avoiding accountability. The intention behind this statement is often to deflect responsibility, leaving the person on the receiving end feeling invalidated and unsure of how to respond. What seems like an innocuous comment on the surface can actually be a calculated strategy to demean and manipulate. When someone uses humor to belittle or insult, they create a social dilemma. The person targeted may feel uncomfortable but hesitate to confront the issue, fearing they will be perceived as overly sensitive or humorless. This reaction plays directly into the manipulator's hands, giving them the upper hand in the interaction. By framing their remarks as jokes, they maintain plausible deniability, enabling them to retreat behind the claim that their intentions were harmless. However, this behavior is anything but harmless. Over time, consistent use of jokes to deliver hurtful messages can erode a person's self-esteem. It fosters an environment where cruelty is normalized, and the recipient of such remarks is left questioning their worth or value. The casual dismissal of valid feelings undercuts meaningful dialogue, preventing genuine connections and mutual respect from forming. A common example might be a coworker who makes derogatory comments about someone's work in a group setting, only to laugh it off with, "Relax, I'm just joking." The target of the comment feels humiliated, but any attempt to address the situation risks making them seem overly serious. This dynamic is designed to stifle confrontation, allowing the bad actor to continue their behavior unchecked. True humor should never come at the expense of another person's dignity or feelings. Laughter can be a powerful way to connect and build relationships, but when used to undermine, it becomes a weapon. An individual who frequently uses this tactic may also reveal their inability to engage in honest communication. They mask their opinions or judgments in jokes, avoiding the vulnerability that comes with expressing their thoughts directly. It's essential to recognize when "I'm only joking" is being used as a tool for manipulation. Start by assessing the context and intent behind the words. If the joke consistently targets sensitive areas or feeling disrespected, it's a sign of deeper issues. Confront the behavior calmly and assertively, making it clear that hurtful comments, joke or not, are unacceptable. People with good intentions will respect your boundaries and adjust their behavior. Those with bad intentions will often double down or deflect further. In the end, refusing to tolerate disguised cruelty sets the foundation for healthier relationships and a stronger sense of self-worth. A strong person doesn't allow humor to be a cover for harm. They stand firm in their boundaries, demand respect, and cultivate interactions rooted in mutual kindness and understanding.